What causes prosperity? It's quite simple. Getting there is difficult, but it's really simple. The prosperity of nations is caused by the prosperity of enterprises within the nations. Now, we can talk about infrastructure, governance, corruption, and a bunch of other things that are correlated with prosperity, but really not causal. These things don't cause countries to be prosperous. What causes countries to be prosperous are the firms within those countries. Here's why. Here's why I think we're right. Think about the global economy, right? It's quite nebulous, it's abstract. What is the global economy? Now let's go one layer lower, and let's think about Nigeria, right? The global economy is made up of countries, like national economies like Nigeria. In Nigeria, you have industries. I will take the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, for instance. Then within that, you've got companies, enterprises, firms. And within those firms, you've got business units, and within the business units, you've got teams. So how many folks are part of a team here at work? Most of us, right? I'm part of a team. Now, the way we do our work in those teams directly affects our business unit, which affects the profitability of this firm, which then goes all the way back and tells us whether the global economy is growing or whether it's not growing. So when we think about GDP, which is a metric that is usually tied to a country, and as a result, a lot of the things that we think about to try to boost GDP are also tied to high-level macro changes, right? So things like changing the interest rates, governance, and infrastructure. Now those things are important, but at the core of growth, prosperity, is really enterprise. It's companies. Give an example. Let's think about Taiwan. 65 or so years ago, Taiwan was as poor, if not poorer, than a lot of African countries. But today, Taiwan is a developed country, right? How did they get there? Now, a lot of people think about Taiwan and they export a lot. And remember, I might date myself here, but that's all right. 1980s, made in Taiwan. Now, I've been doing some research on this, right? Now, if I start talking about America and the UK, it's like the things that the development of those countries happened way back. We talk about the Industrial Revolution, but Taiwan is more recent. The Taiwan, South Korea, and so on. They were really poor in the 1950s. The first thing they did was they looked at local demand. What we call that here is non-consumption. We'll talk about non-consumption. Said, how can we fix local demand? How can we manufacture, agriculture, make things for our people? After they did that, then they start focusing on exports. Now, it wasn't until the mid-1970s that they started focusing on infrastructure. That was when they had 3 successive, huge infrastructure development projects. Railways, highways, ports, and other big infrastructure projects. The government of Taiwan said, look, we cannot do this until we do this. Because if we do this, we cannot pay for it. Think about a lot of the infrastructure we have on the continent. What happens? You build stuff in the city, Nairobi, Lagos, Johannesburg, everybody moves there. We haven't yet figured out how to do productive enterprise, so the infrastructure gets overused. And what happens? It breaks down. And so infrastructure really is not our problem. We think infrastructure causes development. Well, it turns out it's really an output. What really causes development is productive enterprise. And when you're not as developed, our sense is you focus on market-creating innovations, right? Now, we think innovation is at the core of development. Because we do, I think it's important we really look at that term innovation and try to understand what is it. How do we categorize innovation? Now, some of you who were at the keynote yesterday have seen some of these, so bear with me. The first is market-creating innovations. These are innovations that take products that are complicated, expensive, limited to the rich folks in society, and it transforms them into simple products. So 50 years ago, none of us would have been able to have a computer. It was big, it was expensive, it was a couple $1 million. Today, we all have computers in our pockets, right? So that's a market-creating innovation right there. Sustaining innovations. Now, how many folks in here have a smartphone? All right, don't be shy. Let's make this interactive. How many folks in here have a smartphone that was made in 2011? That's what, don't be ashamed. Exactly, that's my point, right? Sustaining innovations make products that already exist better. And they target demanding customers, right? High-end customers. The phone that was made in 2011 is probably not good enough for you today, right? So you get the newer version. But those products are not really targeted at the mass population, the people who maybe could not afford the existing products. And the third type of innovation is efficiency innovation. These innovations make, every company should do them, and they're innovations that allow companies to do more with less. Right? So when you outsource some part of your value chain to another country or something like that, then these are efficiency innovations. Now, when all these innovations are working in concert, the economy is booming. I mean, things are just happening. People have jobs. It's happened quite a bit in Japan. The Asian tigers, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong, and their economies were growing so fast that unemployment was like 2%. If you were alive, as Professor Christensen likes to say, in those countries, you had a job, whether you like it or not. Okay. So, the world knows how to do these two types of innovations really well. They don't really know how to do this. Now, while all these are important, it turns out they have very different impacts on the economy. These create jobs. They use capital. When you make stuff that most people can afford, you got to hire people to make them, hire people to service them, hire people to sell them, and so on. Right? Well, these, it turns out, they may create a few jobs here and there, but that's not really the core purpose. They use some capital, but not a whole lot. And these, well, turns out they actually they eliminate jobs, right? Now, none of these is bad. So I don't want you to walk out here and say efficiency innovations are from the devil and we cannot do them in our company. That's not the point. The point is all of these innovations are important, but they have very different impacts on the economy. And as we think about the continent, we need to start thinking a lot about market innovation. Because investors understand this. They'll give you money for this. But this, it's a little tougher. So we're trying to figure out how do we teach folks how to do this. That's really the point of my research and what I hope becomes my life's work. So let's look a little deeper at market-created innovation. I've got the words on there because I'm going to share the slides, but let's make it simpler. You've got a business model. Every company has a business model, or should, right? And you've got potential customers on the other side. Now, business model is made up of really these four components and how they relate with each other. Resources, really simple. People, cash, buildings, equipment, they're really tangible, right? Assets a company has. The processes are really the ways you use your resources, right? So how do we make decisions? What processes do we follow to hire people, to fire, to budget, to do market research? Those are the ways that you work together in your enterprise. The profit formula is, what do I have to sell my product for? What kind of margins do I need so that I can continue to be a productive enterprise, right? It's really important. If you had a business model that required 10% margins and you sold your product at 5% margins, you may not be in business very long, right? And this is, why do you exist? Why should I buy your product? This is a customer value proposition. The language we use is the job to be done. Jobs arise in our lives, right, as consumers. So this afternoon, when the clock hit about 12:01, I started getting a headache. And that was my body telling me, hey, you need to eat some food, right? So I went and I grabbed some food. The job that arose in my life was that I should go eat. I was struggling. There was a moment of struggle where I was going about my day and I'm like, hey, I need to eat. And so the same thing happens with a bunch of other products that are out there. Okay? So this is why you exist. Now I've segmented potential customers into two groups. Simplified it. Consumption and non-consumption. This is where we've got the rich, and we like to say the rich and the skilled, people who can afford things in society. Right? Now these folks are always going to be okay because they can buy things and hire people to do things and so on. Now non-consumption, the group of non-consumption is always a lot bigger than the consumption folks. And so when you have a business model targeted at those folks, non-consumption, right, that those are the markings of a market-creating innovation. Now, businesses that target non-consumption are the engines of economic growth. You don't believe me, so I'll show you a few examples, and we'll start talking about the attributes. So Henry Ford, most people know Henry Ford. Early 1900s, cars were limited to the rich folks in the U.S. He came and said, I'm going to build a car for the average American. Figured out how to democratize cars. Now, a lot of folks who live in America say we've got great infrastructure. Well, it turns out the U.S. government was trying to build roads, a lot of roads, but they tried a few times, and this is before the invention of the automobile, and it was just hard. They just couldn't raise enough revenue. After he built this, again, a market-creating innovation, they were able to get money from gas taxes, and all of a sudden, voila, all of us are now coming to America to go to university. Right? So, innovation before infrastructure, another example of that. In the mid-1990s, China, the microwave market in China was about 1 million. About 1 billion people in China. Galans is a company, a Chinese company, targeted non-consumption, and you can see the growth trajectory. Mobile phones on the continent. We all are familiar with this story. You had to be really wealthy and pay a whole lot for mobile telephony. But when the MTNs and Celtels and the T-Cell came in, figured out the business model that could target non-consumption, well, it turns out now everybody has a cell phone on the continent, right? Or just about. Okay. So these are the engines of growth for an economy. What are the attributes of these market-creating innovations? First of all, they have to target non-consumption. There are about 7 attributes here. Let's go a little deep into 6 of them. Let's talk about the 6 of these. So on this slide, we'll talk about 3. You have to create a new value network. You have to have an interdependent architecture and enabling technology. So let's hit them one by one. So a new value network, what is a value network? Right, so we've heard terms like supply chain, value chain, things like that, quite similar. It's a context in which a firm establishes its cost structure. Right? So I've put a really simplistic example here so that we can explain. Imagine you were a manager of a grocery store, and you need to get some mangoes. Well, the mango comes to you from the farmer, and you got to pay the farmer for a little something. It gets distributed, maybe puts in a warehouse. You got to pay them a little something. They deliver it to your store. Then you got to do some sales and marketing. You got to pay a little bit for that as well, and you then sell it to your customer. Now, it's going to be very hard for you to sell this mango for less than, in this case, $4, because this is kind of your cost structure. Okay. Now, because market-creating innovations target non-consumption, and there are already existing value networks that target consumption, you almost necessarily need to create a new value network. Now, how you do that, right, is really up to the circumstance, the technologies and innovations that are available at the time, but you can't use an existing value network that's serving existing customers for your market-creating innovations to target non-consumption. Interdependence. I hope I don't mess up on this. Was one of the hardest ones for me to grasp when I was in class, so forgive me if I mess up on this one a little bit. So let's think about it this way. You've got a system with 2 components. It's really simple now. Professor Christensen talked about this a little bit yesterday, right? So let's think about it like a puzzle, right? You've got this puzzle pieces, and there is a predictable interface between the puzzle pieces. You know how they fit together. Now, when you have this, right, then you as a company, you can create what's called a modular architecture. In other words, you can do this part, and you can have a supplier do this part. It's really an engineering principle. But think about it, even in this case, right? If you were getting mangoes from this farmer, and you weren't sure of the quality of the mangoes you were getting. The guy gave you 100 mangoes every month, and 50 were bad, and 50 were good sometimes, and you just weren't sure of the quality. Well, what we recommend is for you to integrate across that component, right? It's for you to develop what we call an interdependent architecture. So it'd be a case like this where you've got two puzzle pieces that don't quite fit together, and you can't quite predict what you're going to get. It's not reliable. But what you then do is, you know what, I'm just going to do it all myself. Because when I'm, right, in this case, when I'm the farmer, then I know at least the quality that I'm going to get. Okay? So that's interdependence. There are architectures out there that are modular, but for market-creating innovations, typically interdependent architecture. Enabling technology, these are typically innovations that just drive radical change in capabilities. Right? So think about what we can now do with a cell phone in our pocket. Think about what we can do with the internet. These are potentially enabling technologies that we could use on the continent to create market-creating innovations. Emergent strategy, patient capital, and abundant resources, or resources in general. With emergent strategy, I'll talk a little bit about this product here that I think a lot of you might have seen yesterday at the keynote. You can take a look at this after we're done. This is a portable refrigerator. It was made in India. About 20% of people in India have access to a regular refrigerator that we would have at our homes. Right? They have similar electricity problems that we have on the continent. And there's a consumer goods company called Godrej. Godrej looks around and says it's going to take us a while to serve, the billion-plus people we have. So let's create something. So they go and they create Chodoku. But as they're creating Chodoku, they think that people need to be able to make ice. Because what good is a refrigerator or a freezer if you can't make ice? Right? And so they go in with that thinking, and after they do some market research, after they do field testing, they realize, ice isn't that important. So they change their strategy. Right? Now, you have to be emergent when you're doing market-creating innovations because you're going into a market or going after consumers that haven't purchased that kind of product before. And so going in with a deliberate strategy, which essentially says, I know what my market is, I know what it's defined as, I know what margins I need to make, might be a fool's errand. You might not be very successful. Right? There's got to be a little bit of humility there where you say, let me learn from the market and be emergent in my strategy. For capital, you need capital that is patient for growth and impatient for profits. So I'll say that one more time. Patient for growth and impatient for profits. So I know there's a lot of allure about creating apps and things where you want to just get users. And we're seeing more of that on the continent. Well, it's important that as you're defining your business model, you're patient for growth. Now, what happened in Nigeria when MTN came in is the stock price tanked. But MTN said, we're going to be patient. Right? We're going to figure out how to serve this market. We don't need to get all the customers in today. We want to make sure our networks are reliable and so on. And now, MTN, I think they're doing quite well, with the exception of the $5 billion fine. In another 30, 40 years. What's going to happen when we got a couple billion people on the continent, same space, and we have similar poverty economics? Let's really think about that. We have issues of Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, movement for the emancipation of Niger Delta, into breaking pipelines and so on. Let's really think about what happens when this doubles and we've got young people on the continent who don't have jobs. So there's a returns argument to be made about this, right? You do very well when you do market-creating innovations. But there's a development argument to be made that I think is really urgent. We can't keep waiting. We can't keep coming over here for school and leaving the continent.